Hey there, G3XE here. This video is the beginning of a VidQuest series. So I recently, since the semester let out, been working on a new campaign for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I wanted this one to be more like a module that someone other than me could easily repeat. With not too many house rules or anything like that. And I wanted to do something very classic because I have a few new members who are totally new to tabletop RPGs. They've heard of Dungeons & Dragons, and for those people, I think they kind of get it when it comes to the very classic D&D tropes, and they haven't been burned out on those yet. And I, think that stuff is cool, so might as well. So I was inspired to put this campaign that I've been working on into this VidQuest form by YouTuber J. Scott Garibay, who posted one called the Ulyain Village, which is really cool, and you guys should check it out. And I immediately put it into my campaign world, not this campaign, but a different one, just because it's awesome, and I love the fact that you can be doing something and listening to YouTube, and that is what preps you as the DM, because sometimes it can be a lot to have to read through a module. I like to listen to stuff like podcasts, so wouldn't it be awesome if you could get a podcast type thing, but for prepping for a D&D adventure? Alright, so let's begin then. This adventure, I'm aiming to last 5 to 7 sessions, starting from adventures at level 3, ending around level 5 or 6, and it is called Malam's Maze. The adventurers have come to the rural northern settlement of Fellhaven, along with a bunch of other adventurers, because the local Lord Warden, Paxtonius I, has posted a 10,000 gold bounty on the head of a young red dragon that has recently moved into the abandoned castle to the north of the village. The abandoned castle, about 100 years ago, belonged to a wizard named Malam, and is known as Malam's Castle. And that's M-A-L-A-M, which is a palindrome. It's spelled same backwards as it is forwards. So this is drawing adventurers from all over the realms, and the opening scene is the adventurers arriving to Fellhaven, then the guards of this small rural northern town being completely baffled to see this size of people. Like, there's a line just to get into the city because the guards are having to check people one by one because they're not trusting of all these different people of all different races and creeds and stuff that have come from all over for the prospect of 10,000 gold. Most people in Fellhaven, this small community, are very distrusting of these city folk, as they call them, and will only trade or barter or provide services for the adventurers if persuaded to do so through a charisma check. The exception to that rule is if any of the characters have the Outlander or a similar background where they too are rural, from the wild origins, right? They spend a lot of time in the wilds and on the fringes. They're not city folk, I guess. Then the townsfolk of Fellhaven will immediately notice that and will trade without requiring any charisma check. The exception to the town's mistrust of the adventurers is the one tavern and inn in the town called the Wobblin' Goblin Inn and Tavern, whose logo is a sign of a goblin who is staggering and swilling a flask, right? So the owner of the Wobblin' Goblin Inn and Tavern is a ruddy-cheeked dwarven man, a hill dwarf, who sees the monetary opportunity with all these adventurers coming to town, and has put up a great big sign that says, "Adventurers welcome." And thus it's the first stop right as you enter the south gate to the village, and that is where all the adventurers are stopping for the night and carousing and drinking and getting into fistfights, and for all intents and purposes proving the point that the country folk, are making about them in a certain sense, right? The people of the village of Fellhaven are mostly human and halfling, although there are some dwarven tradesmen who are like smiths and cobblers and things of that nature. Humans tend to be farmers in the area, and halflings tend to be fishermen, as the Fellhaven River runs straight through town. North, about 100 miles on that river, you'll get to the Fellhaven Lake, where Malam's castle sits atop of. So, the adventurers can feel free to roam around the city. There are the usual shops you would expect of a small village, save for one wizard, one mystic. They call him the town mystic. And he has an apprentice, and it is the town of Fellhaven's custom that there is always one mystic in town to deal with arcane matters. And of the newer generation, whoever is the most magically inclined naturally is required to be that person's apprentice, whether they want to or not. In this case, his apprentice does not want to be a wizard, and the wizard is old and mistreats him on top of that. So there's a lot of mistrust there, and recently he's had an artifact stolen from his... the wizard has had an artifact stolen from his office and suspects the adventurers. He knows it's one of these new people in town. He doesn't know who. So there's a lot of resentment, except in the Wobbling Goblin. In the Wobbling Goblin, the adventurers will encounter loads and loads of other adventurers, and in there it's going to be a lot like dodgeball or something similar in high school, right, where certain standoffish NPC adventurers are like choosing their teams. They're going around being like, you're with me, no, not you, no, you won't last 2 seconds, and going on like that because they want to make a strong enough adventuring band to take on the Red Dragon. And this is going to be a young Red Dragon, a dragon wormling, but I'm calling it, wormling sounds like it's tiny, so I'm just going to call it a teenage Red Dragon from here on out. But either way, they want a smaller group so they can split the 10,000 gold in as few pieces as possible. So this is perfect opportunity for the PCs to make an enemy. You shouldn't specify who that rival enemies or group of enemies is going to be for them, but make a lot of NPCs who are kind of being rude to the players, and usually players are pretty good at making enemies by themselves, and they should naturally form a sort of rival ship with a different adventuring party. So from here on out, I'm going to refer to the player character's rival adventuring party. That should be formed while they're in the town of Fellhaven, preparing to go on their journey to Malam's castle to slay this red dragon. And it kind of makes a cool plot hook as well, because it's a race against time, and while they're adventuring up to the castle and within the castle, there will be encounters with their rival group. And do they work together? Do they fight each other? It could play well. Finally, in the town of Fellhaven, there are 3 rumors that the adventurers can learn about. Now, these rumors, there's one that I classify as an easy rumor. There's one that's medium and one that's hard. These rumors should not be given away for free, willy-nilly. You should not say, you walk into town and you've heard the rumor that this. Leave them as rewards for good role-playing. Keep them in your hand so that when a player decides, you know what, I really would like to make friends with a blacksmith so that he can make me a shield. And even though you hadn't even prepared for that, allow that, right? And then as they're talking with the blacksmith, when he makes a good charisma roll or whatever, have the blacksmith give him the easy rumor or maybe a bit to the medium rumor, and so on. So, The easy rumor, which only requires one kind of check to get from someone, is the story of Malam's castle and why it is now known locally as Malam's Maze. That is a bit of urban legend in the town of Fellhaven, and should be pretty easy to get out of people, especially kids. Now, I'm going to do that whole story in the next video. The medium rumor follows the adventure hook of getting into the castle via a different route. So if they are worried about walking straight up to this castle where this red dragon perches on the tower every morning for an hour or so to survey his kingdom, and they're afraid of just running up at the front door and trying to kick it in, there is an alternate route, although it takes some working out to find out about. In the treacherous woods to the northwest and west of Fellhaven, there is an abandoned mine called Crumble Maw Mine, and it's been long since abandoned. Not since the time of Malam has it been working, but rumor has it that there is a secret passage from the castle that goes to the bottom of that mine as a sort of escape route in the case of an emergency. So, if they figure this out and are so inclined, they can go through the woods, take the road less traveled, go down to the bottom of the mine, go through the secret passage, and end up at the lowest level of the dungeon that's underneath the castle, and kind of sneak their way in that way. The hardest rumor to find out about follows the plot hook of the wizard and the artifact that was stolen from his office. He's very tight-lipped about that, and so is his apprentice, because it turns out his apprentice, mad about how he was being mistreated and wanting to rebel in some way, decided to hire one of these new adventuring people that have come to town, to hire one of the more shady ones to steal the artifact, which turns out to be a ring, from the mystic, his mentor, and give it to the apprentice. The apprentice knows he's not a very good thief, so he wanted to hire someone to do it. And his aim is to sell that ring and then use the money for his own fun purposes. Spend it on drink and women and whatever. However, the thief he hires learns through his plotting and planning of completing the job what this ring does, and seeing an opportunity decides to make off with it himself. So after stealing it, doesn't return it to the apprentice, and instead splits town. And he heads straight east. Now, he's definitely a newbie, because anyone in Fellhaven will tell you, with half a brain, that when you head east, it not immediately, but soon goes to the dark root Fens, a deadly, deadly swamp. This swamp is really hard to get through, difficult terrain the whole way. You are likely to get stuck in mud, and that'll be a good day, because then at least you're not being attacked by bullywogs and twig blights. So he stumbled into there, and so it'll take a few checks and investigating just to figure that much out. If they choose to go after him, which heading east is completely off path for where they want to be heading, which is straight north to Malam's castle. If they head east, however, and march through the Fens and track this thief, they will find his dead body eventually, and the ring, which turns out to be a ring of unburning, which I don't know if it really exists in the thing. I didn't look up if it's a magic item, but essentially it is a ring of fire immunity. So the bearer is completely immune to all fire damage. So you could stand in fire, you could just swim in lava, anything, as long as you're wearing the ring. As you can see, when there is a 10,000 gold bounty on the head of a red dragon, a ring of unburning will come in handy. That will be, the players can decide if they want to return it, if they want to say, hey, I'll give it back to you, but can I borrow it to go kill the dragon? Or maybe they'll just steal it for themselves. Whatever they wish. But this kind of rewards, if they don't want to, I guess, play ball and head for the castle, where the dragon is immediately, and they want to see what's around, this is a good side plot hook that will eventually tie back in to the main quest. So those are the things the player's characters can do in the town of Fellhaven. Make sure to have them make a rival of some kind. So don't be afraid to get slightly mean with the NPCs, right? If one of the people is really, the NPCs is really nice and is like, sir, do you mind telling me which way it is to the Mystic? And it can be a different adventurer, and the person will be like, to the mud with you, wench, I care not for your shenanigans. Something like that. So that's Fellhaven. The next video we're going to be talking about Malam's Castle, also known as Malam's Maze, and why it earned that moniker. See you in the next one.